Here. And then they just assume the middle. It's gonna be me.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for being here on Reading Day, taking time out of your reading day to spend with our guests. We're looking forward to a wonderful 2 days of SuperState, and we're really privileged to have 4 amazing adjudicator evaluators here to provide feedback to those groups. But first, they're here to meet with all of you and answer questions from all of you. So I'll introduce each of our guests and ask them to share a little bit of their background with you to kick things off, and then we'll get into the questions that you might have. Okay? So first here is Damian Crutcher. Damian is CEO of Crescendo Detroit and the Managing Director of the Detroit Harmony Project with the Detroit Symphony. And next is Dr. Sarah McCoy, who is Director of Bands at Texas Tech University. And then Dr. Bradley Kent, who is the State Director of Music for the University Interscholastic League. That's a mouthful. Interscholastic League in Texas, which is, as you'll, I'm sure, hear in just a moment, a gigantic thing. And then on the opposite end there is Professor Alan McMurray, who's Director of Bands Emeritus from the University of Colorado. So thank you to all 4 of you for being here, and welcome.
Damian is.
Oh. What am I doing?
You're sharing your experiences,
Okay.
your journey.
My journey in 2 minutes. Well, it's good to be here with you all. I'm looking forward to the weekend. I am from Detroit. I'm a Detroiter, have been all of my life. We were talking in the truck over, and I said, you know, I only left Detroit twice for a long period of time to study music education at Michigan State University, and then I did a master's at conducting at Michigan. And I do all kinds of stuff these days. But my life really changed in high school at Cass Tech when I discovered the French horn by mistake. I saw it on television one night, and I went in and I told my band director, I said, I want to learn how to play that instrument that they put their hand on the bell like this, you know. And he laughed at me and says, Mr. Crutcher, it's called a French horn. And so he dug one out, and that was like the beginning of the rest of my life, really. So now, of course, I do some conducting, a lot of honor bands. At the Detroit Symphony, I conduct the Detroit Community Concert Band, which is the adult group, and also conduct the middle youth ensemble there as well. And the DSO decided a few years ago that they wanted to guarantee that any kid in Detroit that wanted an instrument would get one. And so I am the managing director of Detroit Harmony, which is that initiative. I thought they were insane, you know. So I just ignored it for years. So I decided to throw my hat in the ring and start doing that, just building it out to make it more sense than that. Like it needs to be music education for every kid, not just an instrument, and then opportunities as well. And I also co-founded Crescendo Detroit 11 years ago, which is an out-of-school wraparound music program where our students take instrumental music, dance, vocal music, anything we can throw at them, DJing, music production. We have 2 cooks that cook at every session, and we feed the kids too. So that's kind of what I'm doing these days.
That's really cool.
Is it cool?
Yeah, that's very cool.
It's cool.
I think I was telling them, I said, oh, I don't know that I have anything super exciting to tell them, but I feel very much like I'm one of you. I grew up in the Midwest, grew up in Indiana, and then moved to Michigan when I was in high school. So I went to another Big Ten school that was green and white in the other state. But man, I started to like just not knowing anything about band, and my music teacher in 5th grade told me I would play the bassoon well because I had long fingers. And I said, okay. And I went home and I said, hey mom, can I play the bassoon? And she says, you're not going to play the bassoon. I said, okay. They said I do clarinet well too. And I didn't know what they were. I mean, I just had no idea. And she said, okay, you can play that. And I'm like, okay. So that's how my big, exciting foray into the clarinet went. But that's how I started band. And then I grew up in Carmel, Indiana. They have a pretty good band program still. And loved it. And so I did all that and played in the youth symphony in Indianapolis and did all the things that you do and took lessons, which that changed my world when I was in high school, junior high and high school. And then we moved to Michigan, and those experiences led to other things. And Michigan State was my undergrad. I taught, my first teaching job was grades 6 through 12. I had 3 job offers in 1 week, 3 interviews in 1 week, and 3 job offers by the end of the week. And it was such a big decision about what to do. And I took the job that I thought gave me the most experience. So I taught grades 6 through 12 by myself. Gave me a lot of experience. And did that for 3 years. It was awesome. And still have, now they're friends. You know, when you're 18 and 22, that's a different thing. But now we're, you know, all adults. And some of those people that I taught all the way back then, with Facebook being old people stuff, but Facebook being Facebook, that's a good reason for it. But taught there, went a friend of mine who was doing a graduate assistantship at Wichita State. I'd never thought about graduate school. And he left there and went and did the assistant position at Michigan State. John Madden, he called and said, there's this really good assistantship here. You get a ton of experience, you'll do this. And I had never considered it. And at the time I was doing a lot of conducting symposiums, and he was one of the first people that worked with me in conducting symposiums. I still remember that. It's very full circle this weekend for me. But anyway, Larry Ratcliffe, dear, dear friend and incredible mentor in every aspect of the word. He said, show me somebody who's been in the same place all their life, and I'll show you somebody who's never grown. And I thought, I don't want to be that person. So I said, okay, I'll go here and do this thing. And I got a lot of experience and had my first L'Histoire there and played in a quintet that made the fish off and did all these things that I never ever thought possible. And then I went to Texas and was a 5A first assistant band director at LD Bell High School, and did that for 3 years. And I always still kind of had an itch. I was still trying conducting stuff and had kind of an itch about that, but didn't think I was very good. I didn't know if I could do it. And then I went to the University of Texas and got my doctorate and thought, oh, I don't know, if maybe I'll just go back and teach public school, but I'll try this college thing out. And then I got a director of advanced position at SUNY Buffalo and started teaching college. And just every single experience has not been for me something that I've approached from, I'm going to go do this so I can do that. It's been like, I'm going to go do that because I want to get better. Every single one, you know, and not even sure that I could get better, but you do. You know, so you take yourself out of your own comfort zone or your own limitations or self-doubts and all the imposter syndrome that we all have and all that stuff. I just wanted to keep learning and growing, and whatever that meant and wherever it landed, that's what I did, you know. And so even when I went back for my doctorate, that was a big, huge decision for me. And I thought, I'm not going to be any dumber than I am right now. This is like when I get out, it's my, you know, I'll be okay. I'll be okay. So it just, everything yielded. If you stay wide open, just stay wide open. And it never gets boring. So I did that for my doctorate, and then I got a job at SUNY Buffalo, and I did that for 6 years, and then I went to UMKC, and I taught there for 6 years, and then I landed in Lubbock, America, and I've been at Texas Tech, I think, for 18 years. I know. I had to ask myself, I think that's right. It's been a long time. I know. I was like, really? So it's,
Okay,
I think I went in 2005. Twice, yeah. 2005. So is that about right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. That's my path.
Wow.
And they're still paying me, so it's good.
Well, let's see. My journey, I suppose, started when I was in 6th grade, and I chose the trombone. Not sure why I chose that instrument, but I did fall in love with it. And I was fortunate that I had a lot of great teachers as a young person, and I went on to study music education at Louisiana State University, and Frank Wicks was my mentor as an undergrad and inspired me, and I knew that I wanted to be a high school band director at that point, and so graduated from LSU and came to Texas, and my first job was teaching high school band in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, not at LD Bell, sorry.
No, it's okay.
But in the Louisville Independent School District, which is still is an outstanding school district in the North DFW area, and taught there for 7 years, and then went to the University of Texas and did 2 grad degrees there, and taught at Texas A&M University of Commerce. And after that, I decided I was going to go to the dark side, and I went into administration and became a director of fine arts in another school district in the DFW area, the Richardson Independent School District. And when I went there in 2008, we thought, gosh, we love the DFW area. My wife is also from Texas, and we thought, well, this is where we're going to be. Our kids were starting school. And I was there 4 years, and the opportunity presented itself to go to Austin and return to Austin, if you will, in my case, and take the position of state director of music for the University Interscholastic League. So I went there in 2012 and worked with my predecessor, Richard Floyd, which I'm sure many of you know. And he was so great in mentoring me and showing me where all the bodies were buried. So we worked side by side for 2 years and transitioned. It was just terrific. And so I've been state director of music since 2013, and gosh, 10 years.
That's amazing.
I know it's hard to believe sometimes. So we, as Dr. Giraldi said, we oversee interscholastic activities in the state of Texas. And we're one of the few states that actually has music as part of what many people call their state activities association. So of course, athletics is huge. But the music side of things, we do serve approximately 750,000 annual participants in music events. And many people think that marching band is the largest activity. It's the one that's most visible to the public, and at times certainly the most controversial. But actually, the largest event we have is concert and sight reading, because it serves middle school, high school, and all 3 divisions, band, choir, and orchestra. So annually, just in concert and sight reading, about 300,000 students participate in that. And so, as you might imagine, it's always exciting. There's never a dull moment. And when I saw Professor McMurray today, the first thing I said to him he said to me first, he said, you have that look that Dick Floyd always used to have when I saw him. This time of year, I said, yeah, you're right, I do. And I said, they let me out of my cage for a few days. So thank you for the opportunity to be here. I am not launching my email because I just don't want to see it until at least so I'm here to take in the experience, and again, appreciate the opportunity and look forward to working with all of you.
These people are all terrific, by the way, and each one is unique in their own way, as you are. My story is a different story. I started on violin and hated the sound of it. So a short time later switched to trumpet. And because there were things that I could hear trumpet doing, I could hear trumpet in so many different kinds of venues, playing all kinds of different music. So I thought I'd try that. And my parents, fortunately, saw the value in private lessons. And so they started giving me private lessons early on. And so even though I was only like in, I guess, 7th grade, I was taking private lessons already. And because I had private lessons and because I enjoyed working, I practiced. But I didn't just practice the normal stuff. My dad played ukulele. Not everybody in the world played ukulele, but my dad played it pretty well. And he would buy sheet music. And at that time, you could buy like all the popular songs and everything. And you get a sheet music. It had a big picture of somebody on the outside with the name of the title of it. And then you open it up. And there's just the chord symbols and the melody lines, like a lead sheet. And the words. And so I would get into this big box of music that he had even when I was, seventh and eighth grade. And I would pull these out, and because I love playing melodies. You never get to play melodies if you're working on, Schlossberg. So, so I started playing this, but I'd always read the words first. And my goal was always, as a little kid, I wonder if I can make this piece sound like the words. So, so early on, I guess I had a kind of a different point of view. I thought that music was something that was supposed to express something. And that made me feel like music really offered me something that was special in my life. My family moved around a lot. My parents, my next oldest sister is 10 years older than I am. So I think I was an afterthought. But my parents were at a position where they were buying and selling homes. And so I went to 2 junior high schools, 2 elementary schools, and 2 high schools. And the only common tone through all that is music. So I could go from one school to another school, and I could still be a musician, even though I didn't have any friends. And because I started playing pretty well, I was easy to make friends. And so so through high school, I kept playing. And because I didn't know a lot of people right away, I would practice more. So I got better. And so I grew up in California, and junior and senior year, I played in both all-state orchestra and all-state band. And my senior year, I played principal at both of them. But despite that, I wasn't planning on majoring in music. My family had a different plan for me, and that was to be a lawyer. My brother-in-law was city attorney of Los Angeles. We lived next door to, everybody had to be tagged. I was getting good grades in school. Music's something you do like my dad did, avocationally. It's not something you make a living at. And this was the quote, and if you go into music, you'll never amount to anything. So I entered school as a pre-law major, and didn't even audition for scholarships or anything like that. And I kind of went under the radar. Most people didn't even know I went in. I went to Cal State Long Beach as an undergraduate because I had friends from school that had gone there. And even though I was offered opportunities to other schools, I decided I'd go there. And I knew that they had a pretty good music program, although I didn't know much about it. But I went in, and I didn't play music the first semester, but the second semester I missed it so much that I decided I needed to do it. So I called up the music department and said, do you have a place for non-music majors? And they said, we have a non-music major band, right? So I went into this non-music major band in the second year of the second semester of my freshman year. And having just been principal in the all-state orchestra and band, I found that I played better than most of the people in there. But I didn't want to do anything. So I just sat in the middle of the section and did that. But I said to somebody afterwards, I said, is there a better group? And they said, well, there's a music major groups, but you probably can't get into that. And I said, well, how do you audition for that? So I went, and the next semester I auditioned for the music major groups, and I auditioned for Bob Reynolds, who happened to be the director of bands there at the time, and the trumpet teacher. And when I auditioned, the trumpet teacher came up to me afterwards and said, have you ever thought of being a music major? And Bob Reynolds recognized me because I didn't realize he was the one who had auditioned me for all-state orchestra. So at any rate, so then suddenly I'm cast into this music major thing, and they actually put me principal chair in the top music major ensemble. I didn't know anything about that. It was all by chance. I just loved playing the trumpet and was a pre-law major. But I found that I loved making music, and I enjoyed going to those classes more, and I looked for more opportunities, and people wanted me to play chamber music with them, and all these things started opening up that I hadn't planned on, but that kind of came my way because I played okay. And so I started doing more of that. And then the trumpet teacher said, you should really come and study with me because I can help you get better. And in fact, you should consider majoring in music education. And I went, well, what does that involve? So I started doing kind of a double major of pre-law and music education, but you really can't do that because music education is all encompassing, particularly at that time, because at that school at that time, you got 1/2 credit for each full semester of an instrument. And so you took a full semester of every instrument: flute, clarinet, double reeds, actually oboe and bassoon, trombone, tuba, euphonium, percussion, and you get a 1/2 credit for that. But it was a full semester. So I started taking those classes and switched. So my father had died by that time, and my mother said, well, this is not what we really want. So, you're on your own. So I got a job because it mattered to me. So, and I kept playing and I kept doing this, and I kept getting better because I kept practicing. I would close the practice rooms at night. I knew the name of every custodian. And I would do warm downs at the end of the evening with a fellow named Wes Jacobs, who ended up being a tuba with the Detroit Symphony. He and I would play these things back and forth because there were really great musicians there at the time. Eugene Corporal was playing principal clarinet while I was playing principal trumpet. The saxophonist who now plays the saxophone with the Los Angeles Philharmonic was there. A guy who was playing trombone in my brass quintet went and played principal trombone with La Scala. It was a rare time. And there were just all this confluence of really talented young musicians. And so I just thought everybody was that way. I thought if you were a music major at any school, you'd be surrounded by those kinds of people. You'd have a conductor like Bob Reynolds, and that was just the way it was, right? So, but I really enjoyed it. So I took conducting, and I liked it so much that I took choral conducting then. And I liked it so much that there were a few of us who wanted to do more. So Bob Reynolds actually started an advanced conducting class. So Eugene and I and about 3 other students got in this class. And what Bob did at that time, you don't even know this story, is he decided that he wanted us to do really good repertoire because we've gone through all the other things. So he put up a sign up for anybody that wanted to sign up, and he put, we're going to play the Hinneman Symphony, Hammersmith, and Lincolnshire Posy. So a lot of players wanted to play that repertoire, so that's what Eugene and I did. We went into this advanced conducting class and we had to learn those scores. We were undergraduates. What were we doing? It was crazy. But at any rate, I got good enough that I thought, well, maybe there's more for me for trumpet. So I did my student teaching at a school in Long Beach, but I was getting more opportunities to play, and I was getting called to do some professional playing at Disneyland and other things. And so I applied. Bob had left to go to University of Wisconsin, and so and he had sent a note to Don Wilcox, who had followed him there, saying, "I wish we had a trumpet player there like Alan McMurray." And so Don shared that note with me, and I thought, "Wow, you really liked the way I played, you know? So maybe I'll apply to the University of Wisconsin." So I did. I applied to the University of Wisconsin, and I sent in my tape materials, my senior recital, and some brass quintet stuff. And I was accepted there with an assistantship in trumpet. And then Reynolds also offered me an assistantship in band. So I had a double assistantship to go in and pursue a master's degree. I hadn't taught at all, but I was there doing that. And so I got there, and they were starting a faculty brass quintet, and I played well enough that the trumpet teacher there asked if I played principal in the brass quintet. So I started playing in the faculty brass quintet, and I became more and more of a trumpet geek, right? Because it just kept unfolding in front of me. But at the same time, I was the graduate assistant with the marching band, Mike LaCrone, and I conducted the non-music major band, and I taught trumpet, and I taught things. But despite that, I finished my master's in a year, and I got up in the morning, and that's all I wanted to do, right? Really, that's all I wanted to do. I confess to you, I didn't have a life other than music because I loved it so much. I couldn't wait to get up in the morning and try to be better, just as you said, Sarah, than I was the day before. I just wanted to be, I didn't have any lofty goal. I just wanted to be better, but these things kept coming at me. So I started, I auditioned for a doctoral program at Wisconsin, and I was admitted into that, but also there was an opening at University of Wisconsin-Whitewater for trumpet, and I thought I'd apply for it, and they offered me that job. So I began doctoral work at Madison while I was doing that work at Whitewater. And Whitewater gave me the opportunity to do more than teach trumpet and horn. They asked me if I could teach horn, and I said yes. John Barrows, who was a very famous horn teacher and player, had been on my committee. And so I went to him and said, "Tell me everything that's different between trumpet and horn," and he did. But I did trumpet and horn, but I also was assistant conductor of the orchestra, conducted a brass ensemble, taught electronic music, 3 sections of music appreciation and brass techniques class. And I did that while I was working on the doctorate. But then I got an opportunity to go to Europe and play in a group over there. And while I was there, I studied with a teacher named Pierre Thibault, who was a piccolo trumpet player and very, very good. And I was studying with him at the Advanced Institute of the Arts in Montreux, Switzerland. And he wanted me to stay. And so he arranged for me to take auditions with the Nice Radio and Ballet Orchestra and the Munich Opera Orchestra. And I won both auditions. And I was faced with this opportunity of staying in Europe and being a trumpet player. And I thought, but there's so much great music that doesn't have trumpet. So from Europe, I called Bob Reynolds and I said, I've got all these opportunities, but I'm not sure this is what I want to do. And he said, I just started a master's degree in conducting. Why don't you come back, put in residence on your doctorate, and you can start that degree. And I did. And that took me on the path of becoming a band director. I kind of reached this point in my life as a trumpet player where I could have done that, but it wasn't going to be enough. So I went back and I fell in love with that. And I fell in love with band, and I fell in love with wind ensemble, and being with Bob Reynolds as a mentor, and he just threw everything at me. He threw everything at me. And the other person in the degree program with me was Stan DeRusha, who was a wonderful musician, and he and I pushed each other like mad. And so then finished my doctoral residency there, and I applied for a job at Southern Illinois University at Edwardsville, and you guys know where that is. And I went down and I auditioned, and they offered me the job, which was to teach trumpet and be director of bands. But interestingly enough, the people who were on the audition committee were not only the faculty, but were the adjunct faculty who, all the other brass faculty other than the trumpet teacher were from the St. Louis Symphony. So Pandolfi was on my committee, he was principal horn, and Bernie Schneider, who was the principal trombone. These were all people who were on the committee. And so they said to me, you play pretty well, and there's this opening in the St. Louis Symphony, for fourth trumpet. You'd have to play for Susan Slaughter, but if you think this is something you'd like to do. And I said, well, I don't know, could I make it work with my job here at Southern Illinois? And they said, well, we'll talk to the chair. So they arranged my schedule so that I could play with the symphony in the morning and then do all my teaching in the afternoon. So I kind of still lived the trumpet dream, and yet was director of bands in the afternoon and got that. Then I got a call from Bob Reynolds one day saying, we're going to start this new position. Elizabeth Green has retired from the University of Michigan, and we're going to cut that into two positions. We're going to create a position for music ed and strings and one for band and conducting. Do you know anybody who'd be interested? And I said, I'd be interested, but only if there was an opportunity also to conduct a chamber ensemble. So Bob arranged for a position which was the associate director of bands, and I started a group called the Chamber Winds at the University of Michigan. And I went there for 2 years, and then I told Bob when I went that I would only leave if there was a major position that opened up either in California, which is where I'm from, or Colorado, which I loved. And Colorado opened up and I applied and I got that job. So then I spent the next 35 years at the University of Colorado, building a conducting program, master's, doctorate, starting a conducting symposium for collegiate band directors, which I did for almost 30 years. And then retired 10 years ago just to kind of complete a series of 5-year chapters and to start just being a guest conductor and a clinician and be able to come and be with you. That's it.
That's it. Wow.
I didn't realize you were at Michigan only those 2 years.
I was there for 2 years, and it was really funny because when I went out and auditioned for Colorado, the top group couldn't even play the Holzford Suite. I mean, it was really, the group had gone down a lot from where it had been at its peak, because they'd done the second performance of the symphony, the second performance of the Doll Satisfaction. There was a time when that group really excelled, but it didn't at the time that I took the job. And the dean did not want me, but he was on his way out too, Imig. And so he called me and offered me the job. And I told Bob that I was offered the job, but then he offered me a salary that was less than I was making at Michigan, and a rank that was beneath. They wanted me to stay at Michigan. Boylan had offered me associate professor and tenure if I would stay, and but I really wanted to go to Colorado,
Right.
but I couldn't do it. So I told the dean there, Imig, that I don't feel I can go for this. He said, well, I guess that's it then. And I said, well, I guess that's it. I turned down the job at Colorado. But the search committee, knowing that this guy was leaving, went to the provost and said, we're going to lose this guy who we really want because the dean is a jerk. Those are their words, not mine. Not mine. And so the provost called me and said, what would it take to get you? And I said, well, I'd want at least as much as I was going to get at Michigan, and I'd like associate professor. And he said, okay. So, but the dean had to write the letter invited me. And so this letter, I still have it. I should read it. It says, in spite of my recommendation and against my will, I am offering, it says that right at the beginning of the letter. So the first thing I did was I called up and I said, are you sure it's okay if I take this job? So I took the job, and they hired a dean at the same time, and who they hired from Western Michigan or Central Michigan, Bob Fink, who'd been at Kalamazoo. And so he and I met at a truck stop halfway between Ann Arbor and Kalamazoo and talked about the future of the University of Colorado and agreed that we would stay for 5 years. And that was the first of my 7 5-year goals. But, that was an interesting time, because that was a time when somebody could just offer you tenure or just offer you a job or call you and say, are you interested in this? That can't happen anymore, but that happened then. And I was lucky it did, because it gave me many opportunities. I'm very grateful for those people. But I never taught in the public schools game. And that's all those instrument classes that I had. I went up and back and had to redo all that. I had great teachers in those instrument classes, but I never had a chance to have to sweat and bleed the way that public school teachers have had to do. So I had to learn that from the many students that I had, and I would go into their classes and I would watch them and I would try to help them whenever I could. And I learned a lot by finding out what I didn't know. That's it.
Questions from you?
Just in general, like the life of a band director is very busy in every aspect, but obviously we all start really enjoying our instrument. How do you like keep that fire going, whether it's like, you know, with your students or just like going back and to your roots and just playing through your horn and like repertoire that you used to like and stuff like that? Like, how do you keep that alive without getting burned out or anything?
I could jump in. That's a good question. I did my master's with Bob Reynolds at Michigan, and graduation day was one of the saddest days of my life. I was in the shower. I got out of the shower, sat on the toilet, and boo-hoo. I was like, what's going on with me? Because I knew that what he wanted for me was one direction. But in my heart, I wanted to go back home and teach. And so I had 3 college interviews and I had plane tickets, but a high school job came open in Southfield, outside of Detroit. So I had to go to him and say, look, I'm going back to teach high school. And it was rough. It took us a few years to manage our relationship. But the one thing he said to me, he says, make sure you continue to feed the artist inside of you. He said, don't lose that part. Go to concerts, play your horn, or you'll start to think that your group sounds better than it is. Your actual band, So you have to keep doing that. You have to, in the midst of grades and ordering buses and arguing with security guards at the school, all that stuff, you have to make sure that you feed that part of you, that you play. There's so many good concert bands and community bands in a lot of areas now. You have to do that. Listen to the best, the local orchestra, go to the rehearsals, go to the concerts, the local chamberwinds, and just keep doing that. That's important. Or, because I did high school marching band I did high school for 12 years, and it was a lot. It's hard to grow when you're doing it. It's hard to grow musically.
Don't make art just an activity. That'll help.
Mm-hmm.
So all those things he's saying, do that. It doesn't get boring. I mean, it just doesn't get boring. Like if you dial into why the reason that you're doing it right now, don't you all just love music? Yeah. You keep that going. And how do you do that? Just don't make it all an activity. There's plenty of activity and structure, and we structure things a lot. We love structure as band directors. But to his point, what do you do that's artistic, or whether it's in band, doesn't have to be band, it can be anything. What do you do creatively? How do you think creatively? Are you only worried about, I was gonna say UIL, but
Okay.
I hear it every day.
Are you only worried about getting a 1 or getting a
Yeah.
thing or playing to the test or, and you're at a certain level of ensemble is your be all end all for creativity and art, grade 3 on a list? I think I'd burn out. So even when I was teaching public school, I had a little list of music that filled me up. Not a lick of it was banned. The Strauss 4 Last Songs. It was,
Jesse Norman?
yes. It was Mahler Rupert Lieder, Janet Baker. It was, I love the Stravinsky Pastoral just because it's neat. Vaughan Williams, Lark Ascending. I just had a list and that grew over time. But if I had had a rough day with Go Tell Aunt Rhody, this filled me up.
How could you not have a rough day with it?
Also fair.
You know what I saw for the first time
What?
a month ago? I actually saw at the market hot cross buns. I had never seen them before.
Did you say one opinion?
No, I said, oh my God, they do exist. I'm sorry. I digress. I'm sorry.
Anyway, there's so many more ways for you to do that. We used to have tapes or whatever, records, all the things, but whatever you have that makes you do that. Even when I went to teach college, I remember I got my college job. Oh, I'm so excited. I'm so nervous. And they said, what are you going to do to stay fresh? And I'm like, and I really remember that question. And so I thought, okay, well, Eastman's not too far away. They're pretty good. So I would try and get up to Eastman every once in a while. And Malcolm Bilson, who's like world famous harpsichord teacher, if you open the file drawer for me at age 32 on how much I knew about the harpsichord, not a lot. He knew a lot more and he was like really good. So I drove up on a Saturday and watched Malcolm Bilson teach harpsichord master classes. And all of a sudden I found out what a harpsichord sounded like. Or when I was at UMKC and watched Tim Adams and Tom Freer from the Cleveland Orchestra do timpani, Beethoven and Mahler Symphony from the timpani. I'm like, people are here for a week learning Beethoven and Mahler symphonies, the timpani part. I'm like, really? So I went down and listened and, oh, yeah, you sound a lot different than students and really good students. And wow, you really know the score like better than we do. Wow, you just learned stuff. So be super, 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 super curious. That helps too. Best conductors, best teachers are the most curious ones. I think that's true.
Amen. Well, from the guy who works at the rulemaking organization, I will tell you, I believe firmly that you do not teach to the test. You do not teach to the rating. You teach to making great music. Always teach with the goal of making great music. Whether you're teaching middle school or you're teaching high school, the rest takes care of itself, I promise you. And yes, it is, we all want to achieve excellence, right? I mean, you're here as students, you're trying to achieve excellence in your classes, on your instruments every day. So we all want that. And sometimes we don't like to admit that we're competitive, but most of us are to a point. We want to do what we do well, right? And so if you teach, you want your students to do that well, but you also want to be sure that you instill in them a love of music through the process. So, because if it's all about the end goal and getting the trophy or the rating, and you don't enjoy the process, you won't last. I promise you. Because that's like fast food to me. That's like you get a sugar high, it doesn't last. I think making with the goal of every day making great music, then you have longevity, or you have a chance for longevity, because whether you're teaching middle school or high school, university level. I think there are lots of commonalities to that. We're very blessed in the state of Texas. We have incredible middle school band directors, choir directors, orchestra directors, and everybody always asks, what's the secret sauce in Texas? It's the middle school teaching.
Yeah.
We have incredible middle school and people who are lifers in teaching middle school, and they inspire me because they are motivated through making music, but they're also highly motivated through seeing their students get better every day at playing their instruments. Like, wow, you can do this today. And I taught this student how to cross the break on the clarinet, and I'm the one that helped that happen. And so that magic that happens in the middle school band room fuels so many people to be lifers teaching middle school band. And so I think bottom line is teach to making great music, find the satisfaction on a daily basis out of making music and teaching your students and seeing the satisfaction of your students grow, whether it's a pedagogical growth or it's through playing great repertoire. I think that can happen both ways on any level.
These are all great things. Yeah, I've been retired now for 10 years, and I have to find a way every day to still inspire myself to grow as a musician, even though I don't have my wonderful students to go and teach all the time. I can't depend that there's going to be a call that's going to give me an opportunity to go out. I've done residencies, and I'm grateful for those opportunities. I had a great time. I did a residency at USC. I did one with Baylor. These are all great schools with great programs, but those I'm adopting those students for a short period of time and then leaving. So for me, I've had to really kind of examine how much of me as a musician is linked to the people who have made music in front of me. And certainly my joy of teaching is forever linked to music making. I can't imagine having lived as a trumpet player, even though I had the opportunity, and have not had the opportunity to touch people's lives the way that we're able to touch them with music and to share our passion for that. That's irreplaceable. There's nothing. But you got to keep your priorities straight when you do that, because it can't be about being impressive. It has to be about being expressive. And those are two completely different goals in mind when you step in front of the students that you're working with. And when you talk about being expressive, then you're realizing that you're really not conducting a flute or a clarinet or a trumpet or a trombone or a drummer. You're conducting the person who plays it. And you're trying to somehow have that person love music the way that you do. You're trying to share your passion for it. And that means you have to be vulnerable. You have to say why you feel that way. You have to have a feeling about it yourself. You can't just stand and teach fingerings or anything else. It's like teaching a foreign language. If we got in front of a foreign language class and we taught the way that some music teachers teach, where you say, okay, I'm trying to think of something in Japanese that you might not know. Kohi o kudasai. Say kohi. Kohi. Kohi.
Kohi.
Kohi o kudasai.
Kohi o kudasai.
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 Kudasai. Kohi o kudasai.
Kofi o kudasai.
Okay, let's go on to something else now. Now, we've taught technique, we've worked on ensemble precision, but you don't know what you said. There's no meaning. On the other hand, if I said to you, I'm going to teach you how to order a cup of coffee in Japanese, then that would take on a whole different meaning to you. You'd know that what you were learning had some application. There was a reason to learn it. There was something that you grew. There was something that could change your life. And I believe that's how we should teach every phrase, that there's a meaning to it. But that means that you have to have discovered it. And you have to choose music that's worthy of that examination. So the repertoire that you choose and your relationship with that repertoire, and then your ability to vulnerably share it with the ensemble, I think is a prerequisite to being a good music teacher. Kohi o kudasai.
Does that mean I want a cup of coffee?
Yeah.
That's a good one to know.
Basically, it means Kohi is coffee and okudasai is like please. So
Okay,
you could say anything in okudasai.
good to know.
What is something that you would tell your undergraduate selves?
Dear dork. I would tell myself to trust myself more. You're gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay. Trust yourself more. But that's a personal answer. I mean, if it said any undergraduate, I'd have a different one. But if you're asking me what mine was, for me, that would probably be what it was.
I would tell myself, you're on the right track.
Same kind of.
Learn more about all music, not just my instrument and what I'm playing in the ensembles I'm in.
Mhm.
Be more global in my music thinking.
I would tell myself to choose my friends from among the people I admire the most.
Kind of following that, what is one thing that you would advise us as undergrads, or like you would have liked for yourself to do in your undergrad time more within like the music ed scope that can benefit like in the conducting world and band and stuff, like something that could be more emphasized that's not currently emphasized.
I think that students today, current company accepted, but many I find, which is different, I've been around long enough to say that it feels different, look for a checkbox approach to their education. If I do this and I do this and I do this and I do this, it's not your fault, but it's society and the way that we think. If I do this and this and this and this, it equals that. I don't think music is that way. So I think a doing thing would be to listen more, be around great musicians, even within your own environment here. There's people that you admire as being exemplary musicians, right? Or exemplary professors and teachers. And I would be around that and get your ears out of a little bit of what Brad's saying, a little combination of both of those things. But listen to a lot of music. You have so easy to do that. Your world is so easy to do that. Listen to different things, go down the rabbit holes that encourages. There's no one way to get music inside you. It's a frustration in teaching graduate students sometimes that they want to know stuff, but they want the pieces. Give me the right answer. I'm like, I don't have the right answer. I don't have the right answer. There's 12 notes. I can't tell you. Like, so how do you become a good musician? How do you develop your own musicality? How do you do that? There's no one way do. And so my thought of being life learners, global learners, be as wide open as you can. What makes the best conductors? What makes the best teachers? If I had one word, I would say curiosity. Whatever that means to you. I think you can learn from everything. I'll learn this weekend. I'll learn this weekend from you. I've already learned stuff by sitting up here. It's awesome. It makes you not get bored.
That's true. I agree. I would say that to dive into as much as you can as an undergrad. I was fortunate because when I was at MSU, there was a graduate student by the name of Ronnie Woopson.
I know, Bonnie.
Listen,
Hi.
and listen, who I am today because of Ronnie Woopson. That's just the bottom line. He was a graduate conducting student of Gene Corporon. He was studying conducting. He was Black from the South, and he was so good. I would just sit there and constantly be like, man, this guy. And so he met me in the courtyard one day and said, so you want to be a band director? I said, yes, I do. He says, no, you don't. I said, yes, I do. He said, okay. So he took me on this life-changing journey. The first thing he gave me was an album of the Eastman Wind Ensemble playing William Byrd's Suite. He said, go listen to that. Tell me what you think. I came back and said, it's boring. And you know Wooten, I mean, he likes, you don't know what you're doing, you know. But he like taught me everything that he was learning from Eugene Corporon independently as an 18-year-old, 19-year-old, 20-year-old. So he made me, says, go to every recital. He said, when the doors open, go listen to all kinds of music. Go. What did you hear this weekend? What did you do this weekend? Get your baton out right now. We would be somewhere watching TV. And he would say, take it out right now. And we would just go. So I was lucky to have someone tell me to do that. So by the time when Bob Reynolds saw me conduct one year at a summer thing, he just looked at me, and it was he and Craig Kirkhoff were both there. But by the second day, it was only Bob Reynolds working with me. I said, what's going on here? What is this? You know. On the last day, he said, you. I need you at Michigan. I don't recruit students, but you got one chance, right? It's so do it all, discover it all while it's there and it's free. While it's there and it's free. When the recital hall opens, go in. If it's opera, if it's jazz, like absorb. And Harry Bejan always talked about that too. Like absorb the people who do it the best and watch them, no matter what it is. If it's writing, if it's pastry making, to do that. That's what I would say.
I just took John Mackey to Lyle Lovett in Lubbock, America. And he had his acoustic, he's got a large group, and he had an acoustic group out of it. It's like 5 musicians. Piano player's like a really great session player in LA. One of the fiddle players had just won a bluegrass Grammy or something. Somebody else had, I mean, they were just all stars. Whether you like all that music all the time, doesn't matter. But hearing them do what they do at that level, it was a great concert.
Mm-hmm.
It was a great concert. And hearing it live versus just on Spotify or whatever. It's cool. It's a good concert.
You know, if I could design an undergraduate curriculum for music education students who wanted to be conductors, I would require as part of it something that nobody does anywhere, but I would do it anyway. And that is, I would require participating in and coaching chamber music. Because I think that the best conductors I know are the ones who listen and are aware and know when to lead and when to let the ensemble internalize it. And I think those are things you learn a lot by playing and coaching chamber music. With the graduate students in Colorado, when we would do a Mozart serenade or anything like that, I didn't use a conductor, but I would have it coached by the graduate students. And we would talk about how the breath was going to be taken and where the motor of the music was and who to listen to and guiding the listening. And they would sit there with score without moving, except of course they were moving, and guide the players that way and be like the 9th member of the octet as part of that. And I think there's so much that can be done there. I think if you have 5 friends who have a quintet, ask if you can come in and listen and just be part of it. Or if you're in one, trade off with the people, each preparing a different piece, and come in and lead it with the others and make decisions about what you want and convince the others. That's a great place to try that and to do that, because I don't know where we learn to do that if we don't learn to do it here. I don't know that we learn to do that in front of the ensemble in our first year of teaching. We shouldn't. So I would encourage you to consider that, even though it's probably not part of your curriculum. It wasn't at Colorado, but I sure think it's an important part of being a musician.
We might have time for one more question. If anyone has it.
Do any of you still play your primary instrument, or is the baton just your instrument? And if you do play, what do you play, and like with who?
I
Or
don't.
when did you drop off? Like, when was the threshold of like, you were playing and things were going really well, and then all of a sudden you were no longer playing?
When I left UMKC, we did some point we did the Ebony Concerto, and it used saxophones, and the saxophones play clarinets, and I didn't want two sections, so I used the guys in jazz band who could double. And the lead jazz TA had a horrible clarinet. I mean, terrible. And I'm like, what are you playing on? I looked at his reed and it looked like Bart Simpson haircut. And I'm like, come over tonight. And he and his wife came over and I said, I'll give you my horn. And I basically just gave it to him. Because at one point he was ready to like buy it. And I'm like, I'm not ready to sell it, but just keep playing it. And I just pretty much, he's getting use out of the karma in the world. I haven't done that, but I have a cello. I decided I wanted to play cello, so I can play about open strings really loud. I told a former TA of mine that I kind of had an itch to maybe play like a recorder, and he collects instruments and has stuff, and so he texted me one day and said, are you still into the recorder thing? I said, hey, whatever. Well, next thing I know, he sent me a set that he had, like a sopranino and an alto and a tenor recorder. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I had to buy a book, like how to play the recorder. But I have really cool. So the itch to play or do something or create, I still have, but I don't play the clarinet.
That's a really good question. For me, I loved playing horn in high school and in undergrad, but like at Michigan, the conducting thing it just overtook me. Like it was like horn, goodbye. But I had to play still. I had to practice. And Bob would say, "Crusher, you got to practice your horn." I don't want to. So I think I played in the commencement band maybe at Michigan, and then the horn just has been there. I took it out last year and looked at it. I took it and I said, oh, wow. But I just put it back. The horn that I played, I studied with Brian Kennedy, who was the second chair in the DSO. And the horn I play on is the horn that he won his audition on.
Wow.
So I studied with him in high school. I got a scholarship out of nowhere to study with a DSO member. So I hooked up with him in high school. So that's the horn. So I don't know. I'm starting to pick it back up again. We'll see.
I played a lot when I was an undergrad. I was fortunate. I spent 3 summers playing professionally at Walt Disney World and played in one group. It's called the All-American College Band. And we provided entertainment in the Magic Kingdom, but we also had a guest artist every week in the area of jazz. So every week I was fortunate I got to play with people like Bob Mincer and a lot of great jazz artists. And then I played with a group called the All-American College Orchestra at Epcot Center. Those groups don't exist anymore, unfortunately. The last Disney group I believe that existed was the band in California. And I believe they just cut that, unfortunately, due to budget cuts. So I played a lot as an undergrad, and then I became a high school band director, and most of my playing consisted of playing with the 6th grade beginner trombone class that I taught at one of our middle schools. And then when I decided to go back to grad school 7 years later, right, I practiced the whole summer because I was going to play this audition I wanted to play in the wind ensemble at the University of Texas. And so I practiced the whole summer. I go in and I play my audition. I'm 30 years old and I'm playing for Jerry Junkin and Don Knobb, who was the trombone professor at UT. And so I played and I worked, worked for 3 months as hard as I could, trying to get back in shape. And I played and I thought, well, okay, I don't know how that went. So I finished and Don Knobb says to me, do you play euphonium?
I had that same experience happen when I went to Texas also. A clarinet player, I'm like, same thing, about that age.
Yeah.
And they said, you play bass clarinet?
I said, no, I do not play euphonium. If it's any faster than quarter notes, I'm not going to play the euphonium. And so, but I did get to play the trombone for a couple of years in the wind ensemble. But after that, when I went to teach Texas A&M University of Commerce, I played in the trombone choir during the 4 years I taught there and loved that. It was great for me at that time, and I have not continued to play since then. My trombone is in a case in my closet, and I see it every time I go in the closet. And one day I think, I need to do that. It's a guilt trip for me, and I wish I did, but life has happened, and I have not continued to play.
When I left St. Louis, I was playing pretty well. I went to Michigan. There was no trumpet involved in that, but I kept playing anyway. And Don Cinta and Dave Schifrin and I put together a thing called the Ann Arbor Chamber Music Celebration. During the summers, we would do chamber music and a variety of things. I would play trumpet or conduct, and that was very cool. Then when I went to Colorado, even though I wasn't teaching trumpet, they asked me to play the trumpet as part of that audition for that gig. So I did that, and that was fine. And then the faculty wanted to have a brass quintet, so I played in that. And I did some playing professionally in the area. But the more I wanted to get to know scores so well that I knew every single part as well as I knew my own trumpet part. And it just took time for me to do that. It took a lot of time to make decisions, and I was conducting more and more complicated scores, and I needed more and more study time. And it got to a point where I played only on rare occasions and not for very long. And then finally I got to the point where I thought, this is not the level of playing that represents how I feel about the trumpet. Whereas if I take that time that I've been spending on the trumpet and put it into my scores, then I think I could be a better conductor. So that was a really hard decision. I still own all 5 of my trumpets, all of them, and I will never get rid of them. When I die, they'll bury them with me. Those were so much a part of my life, and I still look at them and I have such great memories. And when I put them in my hands, I still imagine that feel that you have when the horn resonates, and it's your air that made that resonate. That is such a part of my life that just holding it reminds me of that. And I hold them every once in a while, but I try not to play them anymore.
Great, we probably should wrap up at that point. Thank you so much for being here. Likely volunteering in various capacities over the next couple of days.
Good for you.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
I didn't know you did.
Have you been best 3 summers?
No, isn't that fun? I don't know.
If you said that.